I'm with Frank Biela, driver of one of the cars that has the best chance of winning Le Mans this year, the Audi R8. Frank, what do you get out of driving racing cars? What aspects do you enjoy the most, and what aspects do you least enjoy?
I mean, the competition is, of course, the main thing you are looking for. And for me, it was always very interesting to develop a car, to see how you improve the performance of a car and all these things around the racing car. And then at the end, if you do a good job, you will be competitive, and you can go to the racetrack and you try to show that you did a good job at home. And of course you have to try to beat all the competitors, and then I think that's the interesting thing. I mean, it's a very bright thing to prove that all the aspects you need in a racing car, you did well.
For somebody who isn't a racing driver, is there any experience that you can compare it to?
I mean, I think every kind of sport where you are a single person, single player, let's say, I think it's very similar. You go there and you want to prove that you are the best. I mean, of course, there's only one winner. But to try this, to show yourself, and of course the others, if there are spectators or your teammates or whoever, to show that you are able to be the best. In our case, to be the quickest.
Is there any special character trait that you need to be a good racing driver?
Yeah, I think that you have to be kind of selfish. You have to think about yourself and about your car, and you have to you should not worry about other people. You just have to go your way to make things around yourself best for you. And I think this is very similar in other kinds of sports, if you talk about tennis or whatever. Football, these team games, I think there it's a little bit different. But in this kind of sport you have to be quite, egoistic.
Yeah. Do you ever feel fear when you're driving, when you're racing?
Fear?
Yeah.
No, I think that's the wrong word. I think sometimes you have to have some respect, because especially if you are around with a very fast car on a very fast circuit and all these things, you have to make sure that the things you are doing are very professional. You have to be concentrated, and you have to be careful that everything around you is well prepared. But I think if you feel kind of fear, you should not be in a racing car.
You mentioned concentration. Do you feel that you're concentrating on something, or is it the case that your mind kind of empties and it just becomes a natural activity, driving a car?
I think with the experience and all the years I have done in a racing car, it's a thing which happens automatically now. But of course, you always find different situations, and if it's a new situation, you have to be concentrated. Let's say the normal or the usual driving is a quite automatically thing which happens to a racing driver all the time. Every time you're in a car, you just know what to do. But in any kind of special situation, you have to react maybe in a different way, and from that point of view, you are always concentrated, and you are sometimes it's kind of waiting for a problem, because only then you can react.
Is it more physically demanding or mentally demanding?
It's both. I mean, in Le Mans you have the advantage that you have very long straights on one side. You can relax. The other thing is, because of these long straights, you have very high speed, so you have to be concentrated. But I think everybody agrees that Le Mans is not very hard in terms of the physical things. but you have to be concentrated, very much concentrated because of the high speed.
Looking back on your career, Frank, you've been a touring car driver, you've won here at Le Mans. Are there any special obstacles that you've had to overcome to keep your career going, or even to get your career going in the first place?
Of course, I mean, it was not very easy. And I started in single-seaters. At one stage, there was no chance to continue this career. And I decided to continue with the touring cars, which I did beside Formula 3. And then later I developed several cars with Audi, and finally there was this big step to go into sports cars. And after doing touring cars for, let's say, around 8 or 9 years, only touring cars, it was quite a big step. But it was a very nice thing that we were really involved in the development right from the beginning. So we had a lot of kilometers, test kilometers. We were, let's say, kind of growing up with the car. And I think in the end, I adapted quite well in the sports car.
Is there a way in which you can compare the way in which you respond to the challenges of your career and making decisions, particularly referring back to what you were saying about the competitiveness, which means that somebody who sticks with the job of being a racing driver, in the end actually has all the right character traits to be a good racing driver as such? You see what I mean?
Yeah, I'm quite sure that's the case. But sometimes you do not have the possibility to prove that you are good in any kind of categories, let's say. And in Germany for a very long time, it was touring car, let's say, was the most professional thing you could do. And in my case, when I did Formula 3, Formula 1 was something which did not really exist in Germany. And it was difficult to go into Formula 1 for German drivers. And so from that point of view, I had to prove that I'm a professional driver in different categories and in touring cars. And then working with a manufacturer like Audi was a very, very good opportunity to prove that I'm able to do this job. And I think now I'm 10 or 11 years with Audi, and I guess I did a good job. Otherwise I wouldn't have been with them so long.
Do you sense a feeling of national pride because you are German, Audi is German, or is it just a manufacturer?
Just a manufacturer, it's for sure the wrong word, because somehow I think Audi is one of the most professional manufacturers. Maybe the most professional, but of course there are some other areas where they probably still have to prove that they really deserve this kind of title, let's say. But whatever we did in a very, very professional way. And of course I'm proud to be with Audi, and it's a very nice thing that Audi is a German manufacturer. But I think if it was a manufacturer from a different country, it did not really matter. But the fact that it is German, it's nice.
I'm with David Brabham driving the Peugeot LMP07. David, what do you get out of driving racing cars? What do you enjoy the most? What do you maybe enjoy not so much?
Well, I enjoy winning. I don't enjoy losing. It's a lot of people ask me that question. What do you get out of racing? Why do you do it? What is it? And I don't think you can just say one thing. I think there's so many different factors in the sport. Personally, I'm in an environment which is competitive, which I enjoy being in competitive environments, whether it's racing or it's outside of racing. And it's that I suppose you're pushing yourself and your limits all the time, and as you get older, you gain experience not in being in a race car, but life in general, which helps in your driving as you get older as well. And to say, go on.
Is there something comparable for people who've never driven a racing car that you can say, well, it's a bit like, I don't know, playing tennis, or it's a bit like, is it like anything, or is it something that just doesn't have any analogy at all?
I think it is unique in some way, because it's not like a game of tennis where you've got one opponent, you've got a racket and a ball and a court. In motorsport, the cars are so different, the teams are different. We go to different tracks. It's there are so many things that can either go right or go wrong.
Is there a sense in which you're competing with yourself as well as the competition, the drivers of the other cars?
Yeah, I mean, you always try and push. I do. I'm always trying to learn more, push myself more, and you're involved in a team environment, particularly in sports cars, because you've got another driver that you've got to work with, which, I enjoy that working relationship. I enjoy people, and I enjoy working with people. And as I've got older, I've become better at working with people, and I think that's also helped in my driving as well. And and personally, as an individual, you go through stages, where you're confident, everything's going right, and then all of a sudden things go tits up, and all of a sudden doubts start coming in. You end up going on a bit of a spiral. You start doubting yourself and stuff like that. And that probably happened more in my early part of my career. But as I've learned more about me and life and all that sort of thing, I'm able to cope with that better, where I don't have those doubts about myself, because I know what I can do and I know I do it well. But sometimes that's not enough, because other things around you aren't working quite well.
You're kind of describing character traits there that you can see in yourself. Are there things that you think that kind of are common to all racing drivers, certain particular character traits that they have?
Yes and no. I mean, in racing, everyone wants to win, and each person has their own style at doing it, and everyone's an individual, whether they're a racing driver or the guy off the street, and we are, as in human beings, we are so complex that I think a lot of people, and including myself in some way, we struggle to know what we actually are and what we're doing here on this earth, and everyone approaches things very differently. I can only speak for myself and the learning that I've had and the experience I look forward to in the future.
In terms of, as you say, the learning that you've had, obviously your family background, racing must have been a part of your life from a very early age, or were you kind of protected from it and then fell into it through a different route?
Yeah, that was, yes. I had an interest in racing. I knew my dad raced. My dad retired when I was 4 and a half. We went back to Australia, and I grew up there. My passion was football, soccer, and I played soccer every week and stuff. My brother started racing while I was playing soccer. I knew he was racing, and I went to a few races, but I had an interest, but I didn't have a passion for it as such, because my love and passion was football. And it wasn't really till I left school and then visited my brother Jeffrey in America, who was doing IndyCars, that I actually saw racing really for the first time properly. And I then decided I wanted to try it and see whether I would enjoy it or not. And well, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, so, do you sort of ever kind of feel sad, perhaps, about the fact that if you may have got into it earlier, your career might have taken a different direction? You might have been, I would say, more successful, because you've been very successful, but successful in different arenas, such as Formula One or other areas. Do you feel any regrets about that, or are you more content with the way life has happened, the way it's happened?
As I've got older, I suppose I've believed more that things happen for a reason, and I can't look back and look at it in a regretful way, because it's what's happened I've certainly learnt a lot from the experience. If I was thinking just purely racing, yes, probably if I'd have started go-karts. I started when I was 17, which is quite late. I was the youngest in the family to start racing, put it that way. But I suppose if I look at just the racing in itself, yes, I think if I'd have started when I was 8 or 9 in go-karts and had all that experience in karts before I reached cars, I think I would have grown as a person more than I had not doing it. But I don't want to look back and be regretful for it. I look back, I think I used to, as I was growing up. But I think now I'm at a stage in my life where I can look back and say, okay, things happen for a reason. And when I analyse some of those things, I start to work it out a little bit, And I've still got a lot of years left in me, so I'm better off looking at that experience and saying, okay, this is where it went wrong. These are the reasons why. Don't look at it back in a sort of in an ego type way. Try and analyse it, take the ego away, and look at it, and you can understand it a little bit better. And so I want to learn from that experience, and I want to look forward. I don't want to look back.
Changing the subject somewhat, do you ever feel fear whilst you're driving?
No, I don't. I suppose the fear of, fear, what is fear? False expectations appearing real. I mean, that's what fear is. If we could eliminate fear, I think our lives would be a lot better. No, I think I'm sure everyone has fear in them. I mean, it's natural, unfortunately. And there are probably times when you've had a bad run, you've had an accident or something like that, and you get back in the car and you're not quite there, and we've all gone through it. A lot of people probably don't want to admit it, but we've all gone through it. And fear is in not so much fear of crashing and hurting yourself. I suppose it's the fear of underperforming yourself. And if you're not performing it, the chances are that you're not going to get a good drive and so forth, and you can end up getting wrapped up into it. And
so it's a sort of fear of failing to perform, rather than a physical fear of the danger.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to be aware of the dangers, obviously, but I think you've got to have the trust in the team, and you've got to have total and utter belief in yourself. I mean, I think that is more of a key than anything. That if you have that total belief in what you can do and what you're able to do, then there's no reason to fear or have doubts.
You're hitting on another point there, which is kind of self-confidence. In terms of concentration, particularly here at Le Mans, you've got long periods of driving, high concentration. Is that a very important part of being a racing driver?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this particular race, it always helps to have experience here. I mean, I remember my first time here in '92. I drove for Toyota in the Group C cars, which were great cars. But the first time I got in the car in the race, it was at night, and it was pissing down with rain. Not only was it night time, but it was thick fog. And I was shitting myself. I tell you, I can't. My first lap, I didn't get out of third gear because I could not see a thing. But there was still no pace car or anything, and I thought, I've just got to go flat out like everyone else. And I felt very uncomfortable doing it because, I'd be going down the straight, just seeing these lines in front of me. If there was a slow car in front, I would have hit it, if I hadn't reacted in time. And thank God I didn't, But this particular track here, I think experience definitely helps. And when you've got to concentrate for so long, and particularly when you're tired, you need to. This is where you need that self-belief. You need to have that focus the whole time. And it's a long race, but you've got to have that mindset in your mind as a positive mindset the whole time. Focus on it and work with the team, and the more you do it, the better you get at it.
Are you actually thinking about things? Are you thinking about steering, turning in, braking, cars around you? Or do you find that as you get into a stint that your mind kind of empties and that there's a thing known as the flow or the zone when everything's just happening and you're just part of it rather than controlling it?
Yeah, when you start the race, you're thinking about everything. And you're thinking about, okay, what speed are we going to be able to run at? You know, it all depends on the car and the grip and everything. You get a situation as the race unfolds, you then start to get into that zone where you jump in. You're not thinking so much about the driving or the problems with the car, but you're noticing everything, but you're noticing it at a slight distance away from it. So you're able to then mentally be in the flow of the way the race is going, and that as the race goes on and on and on, I think as it goes into the night, you're really in that flow. You know, if you're able to. I mean, it's a great feeling. But the difficulty is when that sun comes up and you know you've got so many more hours to go. You're tired and stuff like that. To remain in that flow, I think, is important. And it's tough. It's tough to do it.
Is it something which you enjoy? I mean, is that part we started off with what you enjoy out of racing? Is that when the sort of the peak of where the enjoyment comes from, or is it more just standing on a podium at the end?
No, I mean, obviously the podium at the end, if you're on the podium at the end, is what you're aiming for, particularly the top spot. But this, I think, when you get to the morning and then you look ahead and you think, God, you've got another, whatever many hours you've got left. I mean, here, obviously, the race starts at 4 and finishes at 4. We've got a hell of a lot of time as that sun comes up. Still another day to go. But I think it becomes then more that personal challenge upon yourself, you go back in the car and you're tired, your body aches, and you get in that thing, you've just got to keep pushing hard, and you're then relying more and more on yourself as a person, individual, and you've got to keep it going for yourself, for the team, for that result that you want to get. And when you get on that podium, I mean, I've been on the podium here once with the Jaguar, and that feeling when you walk up there and know that you've not only you're on there, but you've done the race and you've got through it. And it's a great feeling, you can't sit there and describe it to someone. You just got to feel it,
Podiums at Le Mans are said to be very special. You've count yourself honoured to have been up there?
I mean, when I was on the podium with the XJ220 Jag, which was the GT class, I mean, the result didn't stand because of it.
We don't have to cover that.
But the very special feeling of being up there, not only being on the podium but being a Jaguar driver as well, with all those fans out there. It was like we'd won the race. The big announcement, the Jaguar drivers were coming on. I'd had the car drop on my foot before the race, and it was black and blue, and I had to wear a sneaker, and it was so painful through the whole race. But when walking onto the podium, I didn't feel a thing. And I have to say, it was a very, very special moment. Very special moment. And not only that, my brother won outright in the Peugeot, and so it was a great. After the race, back at the chateau we were staying at, Jeff and I were sort of outside with, the two trophies sitting next to each other, and we're just kind of looking at them, it was very, very special, and I mean, once you've tasted it, you want more of it, and unfortunately, I haven't had that taste of having it again, but I certainly am working towards doing it again on the top spot on the main deal,
I'm with John Nielsen, who's driving the Dane Blower V Stone with the Judd engine. John Nielsen, a former winner at the Le Mans 24-hour race. John, what do you get out of driving a racing car?
It's a passion that I've had since I was a boy, and I love the feeling getting into a car, doing the belts up, and be part of it. Feel basically the wheels, the two shoulders, my right hand shoulders, my right rear wheel, and left hand, so on. I just become part of the car, and it is fascinating to make that car work as you want it to work, to do the job for you, and become one.
What are the bits that you enjoy most, and what are the bits that maybe you don't enjoy so much about racing?
There's a lot of wasted time around it. Everything takes a long time. Not on the track, of course, but around it. The race weekend is long, and sometimes when you've been in it for 27 years or something like that, you sometimes just want to get on with it and do your job. And that's sometimes a little bit boring, but on the other hand, it's part of this world that we are in, and you have to accept it, and I do.
Are there any special character traits, aspects of your character that are important to being a racing driver? What are the bits that characterise racing drivers?
I think every racing driver would give you a different answer on that one. I don't know exactly, really don't. I mean, you have to be calm, you have to be realistic, you have to be able to pace yourself, and also be aggressive when need is. I think that those are the things.
Are you fearless? Do you have to kind of shut out fear from your character?
No, fear is always there, and any driver who says there's no fear, I don't believe that, because if I go slowly around Le Mans and I look at the circuit, I look outside the circuit, where if I go off here, what would happen? Yeah, then I really fear. I have fear, and I don't want to be at Le Mans. But when you're in the race car, all you concentrate about is that black piece of tarmac in front of you, and nothing else. And then there's no fear, because you don't see anything else. You only see where you want to go. You don't see where you would go if. So from that point, when you're at speed, there's no fear.
Looking back on your career, as you say, you've had a long career in race driving. Has there been times during that career when you've thought, I'm going to have to stop this, not necessarily because of fear, but because of, I don't know, money, fitness, other things? Have there been times when you felt that your career has stopped?
Every career, I guess, is a bit up and down, and so was mine, or is mine. And there's been maybe a couple of times where I thought, no, I don't really need that. For example, I think it was in 99 at Sebring. I had a massive big crash in the Panas, hitting the wall head on, and I just thought, I don't really need this. This is too much for me. And but then a couple of days later, you get back to normal, and you analyze what happened and so on. And the decision then is to continue, and then you don't think about it anymore.
Is that part, do you think, of what makes up the characteristics of a racing driver? I mean, never mind the actual driving on the circuit, but it's this ability to get out of an accident or get out of a situation, put it behind you and continue. Is that critical, do you think?
Yeah, it's very critical. The moment you get back in the car, if you've made the decision you want to continue, when you get back in the car, when you feel confident and you feel good in the car, you know you've made the right decision. So far that's been the case with me if I've had my doubts. The day that this will not be, then you have to stop.
You mentioned at the start that you get into the car and you feel as if you are becoming part of the car. Can you talk us through that a little bit?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's like if you've been out all day in a cold, windy day, you're really cold, down to the bones. You get home, you fill the bath off hot and nice, and you jump in there. It's fantastic. That is the sort of feeling I get when I'm in the car. I become part of it, and I'm very fascinated by the technical side of it because a racing car is a tool for me to do my job. For a football player, he's got his boots, but the car is a lot more technical than the boots are. You can actually get the car to do a lot of your job. And to make that a unit and make the car do the work for you, that's very, very fascinating.
When you're driving, obviously concentration is very important, but what are you actually thinking about? I mean, is it purely simple mechanical things like changing gear, braking, steering?
I don't think as such. Here at Le Mans, you have to be careful not to start to think, because your thoughts can drift off. When you're out there on a lonely stint at night, sometimes you can be there. You don't meet anybody. You're just on your own, and suddenly your thoughts, even though you are at your pulse is high and so on, your thoughts can drift off, and you make a little mistake, and then you wake up again. I try not to do that, or everybody has to try. Really, sometimes concentrate on not thinking about something else, especially at Le Mans. It's not the case in other races, but sometimes it can be a problem here.